February 14, 1943, 6:40 a.m. Kasserine Pass, Tunisia. The air smells like cordite and burning oil. A German Panzer IV commander leans out of his cupola as the morning light cuts through drifting smoke. In front of him, the battlefield is littered with twisted metal, burned-out M4 Shermans, split open like tin cans. Blackened tracks, turrets thrown sideways by internal explosions. American dead lie where they fell, half covered by sand kicked up from artillery. It looks decisive. It feels decisive. Somewhere behind the lines, a staff officer opens a leather-bound notebook and writes numbers in pencil. Shermans destroyed, 23. Half-tracks, 17. Trucks, dozens. To German command doctrine, this is progress. This is how wars are won. For decades, German military thinking has been shaped by one idea above all others: Vernichtungsschlacht, the battle of annihilation. Find the enemy's main force, destroy it, break the spine, end the war. It worked in Poland. It worked in France. It nearly worked in the opening months against the Soviet Union. And here, in the dusty folds of North Africa, it seems to be working again. American units, green and inexperienced, have been smashed, their armor burned, their formations shattered. German officers exchange glances that say the same thing without words. They weren't ready for this. By nightfall, reports flow back to Army Group Africa headquarters. Losses inflicted, enemy retreating, another step closer to stabilizing the front. The German command believes it has done what it always does. But there is something wrong with the picture. No one hears it yet. No one smells it. No one sees it coming. Because the real counterattack isn't happening in Tunisia. It's happening 5,000 miles away, under fluorescent lights, steel cranes, and conveyor belts that never stop moving. In Berlin, intelligence officers pin new situation maps to the wall. Colored flags shift slightly west, then slightly east. Numbers are tallied, ratios calculated. Destroyed enemy equipment is subtracted from estimated Allied inventories. This is how the German war machine thinks. Wars are equations. Armies are finite. Losses matter. If you destroy enough tanks, eventually there will be no tanks left. If you kill enough soldiers, eventually there will be no soldiers left. This logic is elegant, clean, almost comforting, and catastrophically incomplete. At the Oberkommando des Heers, staff planners study American performance with a mix of contempt and curiosity. The Sherman tank is unimpressive, thin armor, high silhouette, inferior gun compared to the Panzer IV's long-barreled 75. It burns easily, explodes violently. German tankers nickname it the Tommy Cooker. Trucks, soft-skinned targets, artillery, adequate but unspectacular, infantry, brave but tactically clumsy. Nothing here looks revolutionary. Nothing here looks decisive. And so German command frames the problem incorrectly. They believe they are fighting an army. They do not yet understand they are fighting a factory system. Back in North Africa, the Germans prepare for the next engagement. They expect a pause, a lull while the Americans regroup, refit, replace losses. This is how it has always worked. When a formation is mauled, it pulls back, it waits, it rebuilds slowly, painfully. But then something strange happens. Reconnaissance units report movement, columns, dust trails on the horizon. Not retreat. Advance. Fresh trucks roll forward. New Shermans, paint still clean, engines humming differently than battle-worn machines. Replacement crews wearing boots that haven't yet been scuffed by the desert. German officers frown at the maps. That unit was destroyed. Those tanks were knocked out. Those trucks were burned. Yet here they are. Again. The reports escalate. American formations thought combat's ineffective are suddenly back in the line, not partially, not limping, fully equipped. German intelligence officers adjust their estimates. Perhaps earlier kill counts were inflated. Perhaps fog of war distorted the picture. They revise the numbers. Still, the Americans keep coming. What German command cannot see, what it never truly grasps, is that destruction does not equal depletion in the American system. Every Sherman burned in Tunisia has already been replaced in Detroit. Every truck lost has a twin rolling off a line in Ohio. Every artillery tube destroyed has 3 more waiting in crates. Losses do not weaken the enemy. They activate him. In the United States, there is no sense of emergency tied to individual battles, no shock at casualty lists from distant deserts. The war is abstract, industrial, procedural. A destroyed tank is not a tragedy. It is a work order. At Ford's Willow Run plant, at Chrysler's Detroit Arsenal, at General Motors facilities stretching for miles, the response to battlefield losses is not grief. It is acceleration. Shift changes, overtime, new tooling, standardized parts that allow damaged equipment to be scrapped instead of repaired. German planners assume every tank is precious. American planners assume every tank is temporary. This single difference will decide the war. But in 1943, German command doesn't know that yet. They still believe they are winning battles that matter. They still believe the numbers add up. They still believe that if they just destroy enough, the enemy must eventually run out. They do not yet understand that they are counting the wrong thing. And soon the realization will arrive, not as a theory, not as a memo, but as a nightmare that repeats itself on every front, again and again. Because no matter how many soldiers they kill, the factories keep coming. The next blow doesn't come in Tunisia. It comes on paper. Spring 1943. Somewhere inside a concrete operations building in occupied France, a German intelligence officer spreads aerial photographs across a long table. The images show ports, rail yards, endless rows of trucks parked nose to tail, crates stacked like city blocks, tanks wrapped in canvas waiting. The numbers don't make sense. Losses inflicted in North Africa should have forced a slowdown, a pause, a strategic breath. Instead, Allied tonnage arriving in Europe is increasing. More ships, more vehicles, more men. The officer sharpens his pencil and recalculates. Perhaps shipping losses were exaggerated. Perhaps convoy sinkings were misreported. But deep down, a quiet unease begins to form. Because this isn't how an army behaves when it's bleeding. German doctrine has always been clear about the enemy. You defeat the fielded force. You shatter cohesion. You break morale. You exploit the collapse. Everything is built around the battlefield moment, the decisive clash where skill, maneuver, and firepower converge. German generals are masters of this kind of war. They live for it. But the Americans aren't playing that game. Not really. On the Eastern Front, German officers have learned painfully that Soviet manpower seems inexhaustible. Divisions vanish and reappear under new numbers. Losses that would cripple a Western army barely register in Moscow. German command adapts by telling itself a story. The Russians are throwing men away. They have numbers, not quality. Eventually, the cost will catch up with them. This explanation preserves the logic of annihilation warfare. But the Americans don't fit that narrative. They aren't massing infantry in human waves. They aren't bleeding slowly. They are replacing completely. In Italy, after the landings at Salerno, German commanders believe they have achieved something decisive. Allied beachheads are fragile. Units are exposed. Counterattacks inflict heavy losses. Destroyed tanks, Wrecked landing craft. Thousands of casualties. Again, the ledger fills with reassuring figures. And again, within weeks, the Allies push forward reinforced, resupplied, mechanically whole. German officers begin to notice something unsettling. American units don't fight to preserve equipment. They fight assuming equipment will be lost. A Sherman crew abandons a damaged tank without hesitation. Trucks are driven hard until they fail, then left behind. Artillery fires relentlessly, barrels overheating, ammunition consumed without restraint. To German eyes, this looks reckless, wasteful, almost irresponsible. But it is not carelessness. It is confidence. Back in Germany, Albert Speer fights his own war, scrambling to rationalize production under bombing, shortages, and bureaucratic chaos. Each tank requires skilled labor. Each aircraft is a semi-handcrafted masterpiece. German weapons are magnificent. They are also irreplaceable. Every Panther lost is a problem. Every Tiger destroyed is a crisis. Every experienced crew killed is a wound that never quite heals. German commanders know this instinctively, so they assume the enemy must feel the same way. They assume every Sherman burned hurts American command the way a lost Panther hurts them. They assume wrong. What German intelligence never truly grasps is that American production is not an extension of the Army. It is a separate organism. Losses don't flow upward to create strategic panic. They flow backward into a system designed to absorb them. In the United States, factories are not reacting emotionally to defeats. They are following schedules. A destroyed tank in Italy triggers a replacement request that barely registers among thousands of others. There is no sense of urgency attached to individual battles. The war is measured in months, not days. German command is fighting tactically. America is fighting statistically. In Normandy, the misunderstanding becomes lethal. German forces do exactly what doctrine demands. They counterattack. They bleed the Allies. They destroy armor in ambushes, knock out vehicles along hedgerows, turn narrow roads into graveyards of steel. German tankers keep score. 5 Shermans, 10 Shermans, 15 Shermans in a single engagement. By German standards, this should break momentum. But Allied pressure never eases. If anything, it intensifies. The hedgerows fill again. New tanks appear. Fresh infantry rotates in. Artillery fire grows heavier with each passing day. German commanders begin to feel like they are striking water. At the front, officers still believe they are winning engagements. At the operational level, they still believe they are inflicting unsustainable losses. At the strategic level, however, something is slipping. German command does not yet understand that they are not reducing American strength at all. They are simply feeding American throughput. Every destroyed vehicle is already accounted for. Every casualty has a replacement in training. Every setback is temporary by design. This is not a flaw in American planning. It is American planning. The Germans keep asking the wrong questions. How many tanks can we destroy? How many divisions can we attrit? How long before they crack? They never ask the one question that matters. How many can they replace? Because if they asked that question, truly asked it, the answer would be unbearable. And when the realization finally comes, it won't arrive in a briefing room. It will arrive on the battlefield, when German commanders discover that victory has become mathematically impossible. Summer 1944, Normandy. A German regimental commander stands in a sunken lane, boots sinking into mud churned by weeks of shellfire. The hedgerows that once provided concealment are shredded. Trees are splintered into jagged stumps. The air never truly goes quiet anymore. Artillery thumps in the distance. not in bursts, but in a steady, industrial rhythm. He flips through his map case, fingers smudged with dirt and sweat, and listens to the reports coming in over the radio. Enemy armor sighted. Enemy armor destroyed. Enemy armor advancing again. Always again. For the first time, the numbers begin to feel wrong. German command prides itself on precision. Every engagement is logged, every loss estimated, every kill credited. But by mid-1944, the math no longer balances. Entire battalions of Shermans are destroyed in Normandy's narrow lanes. Ambushes succeed. Panzerfaust teams burn tanks at close range. Skilled gunners knock out targets at ranges the Sherman can't match. And still, the Allied armored columns keep pushing. German officers begin to notice something subtle and terrifying. The enemy does not pause after losses. There is no operational breathing space. No moment where pressure eases and lines stabilize. The Americans absorb damage and continue forward, as if destruction were simply part of the process. Because for them it is. This is the moment German command begins to glimpse the truth. Not fully, not yet, but enough to feel dread. They are not fighting an army that weakens with losses. They are fighting an economy that converts losses into momentum. In American planning rooms, the war is not discussed in terms of heroic units or decisive clashes. It is discussed in flow charts. Tonnage, replacement rates, shipping capacity, output curves. If a division loses 30% of its tanks in a week, the response is not shock. It is a schedule adjustment. If artillery consumption doubles, production is increased. If vehicles wear out faster than expected, more are built. The system assumes damage. It plans for destruction. German planners never designed their war this way. They assumed the enemy would try to avoid loss. The Americans assume loss is inevitable. So they make it irrelevant. German industry cannot compete. Bombing has reduced output. Skilled labor is scarce. Raw materials are limited. Every new Panther requires trade-offs elsewhere. Worse still, German equipment is complex, maintenance-heavy, and difficult to repair in the field. A damaged Tiger may be out of action for weeks. A damaged Sherman is often abandoned and replaced tomorrow. German command sees this and misreads it as carelessness. But what they are witnessing is something far more dangerous. Confidence in replacement. On the ground, German soldiers feel it first. Panzer crews joke bitterly that the Americans are growing tanks. Infantrymen speak of endless columns stretching beyond the horizon. Officers notice that even after successful defensive actions, their situation somehow worsens. Every engagement costs the Germans something they cannot afford to lose: trained men, veteran crews, irreplaceable vehicles. Every engagement costs the Americans something they plan to lose. The exchange ratio doesn't matter anymore. By August 1944, after the breakout from Normandy, the illusion finally cracks. American armored divisions race across France at a speed that defies German operational logic. Supply columns follow like clockwork. Fuel, ammunition, spare parts, always arriving, always sufficient. German command has no answer. Their doctrine demands decisive battles. But the Americans do not need decisive battles. They need time. And time is the one thing German command no longer has. At higher headquarters, some officers begin to voice the unthinkable. Even perfect tactical performance cannot change the outcome. Even if German units fight flawlessly, even if they destroy more than they lose, the enemy will still grow stronger. Because the battlefield is no longer where the war is decided. It is decided in factories, rail yards, and ports that German bombs cannot reach in sufficient numbers. The war has become an equation with only one solution. German command does not surrender at this realization. But something inside it breaks. Orders grow more desperate, counterattacks more frequent, losses more catastrophic. They are trying to win a war that no longer exists. A war of annihilation against an enemy that has made annihilation obsolete. And the cruelest truth of all begins to surface. The Germans did not lose because they fought poorly. They lost because they fought the wrong enemy. An enemy that did not wear a uniform. An enemy that never slept. An enemy made of steel, schedules, and assembly lines. And by the time that enemy was finally recognized, there was nothing left to do but endure the inevitable. Autumn 1944, Western Front. A German Corps headquarters is lit by a single bare bulb swinging slightly from the ceiling. The walls are damp. Maps are pinned with shaking hands. Outside, the low thunder of Allied artillery never stops. An officer clears his throat and begins his report. Enemy units destroyed. Enemy armor losses confirmed. Enemy advance continuing. No one interrupts him. No one needs to. They've heard this before. At this stage of the war, German command is no longer blind, but it is too late. They now understand that American strength is not linear, it is cumulative. Every week the Americans fight, they grow stronger. Every week the Germans fight, they grow weaker. This is not a tactical problem. It is a structural one. The Ardennes offensive is conceived in desperation. A final gamble to restore the old logic, to smash the enemy's front, split his forces, destroy his cohesion, and force negotiation. It is a throwback to a war German command understands. Fast movement, shock, encirclement, annihilation. But even as the plan takes shape, its flaw is already fatal. It assumes that destroying enemy units will matter. In December, when German armor crashes through thin American lines in the Ardennes, early reports are euphoric. Columns overrun. Supplies captured. American units scattered. For a moment, it feels like 1940 again. But then the pattern repeats. American forces do not collapse. They absorb the blow. And then the response begins. From the sky, transport aircraft pour in supplies. From ports, convoys continue to unload. From depots, replacements move forward. Entire divisions shift positions with mechanical efficiency. German planners had hoped to paralyze the enemy. Instead, they awaken the system. What they finally realize too late is this. American command does not need to avoid disaster. It only needs to recover faster than disaster can accumulate. And it always does. By January 1945, the Ardennes offensive has failed. German losses are irreplaceable. American losses are already being replaced. The arithmetic is merciless. In staff rooms and bunkers, German officers begin speaking in a different tone. No longer of victory. No longer even of survival. But of inevitability. They have destroyed thousands of American tanks. Tens of thousands of vehicles. Hundreds of thousands of men killed or wounded. And it has changed nothing. The realization is devastating because it reframes everything. All the skill, all the courage, all the sacrifice. It was never going to be enough. Because they were never fighting the right target. The American war effort is not concentrated at the front. It is distributed. Factories in Detroit. Shipyards in California. Rail hubs in Chicago. Training camps across the South. German command cannot reach them. Cannot disrupt them. Cannot exhaust them. The battlefield has become secondary. The war is already decided elsewhere. By early 1945, German commanders understand something no doctrine prepared them for. You cannot defeat an enemy who plans to lose. You cannot win by destruction, when destruction feeds the machine you are trying to stop. The war of annihilation has met an enemy that renders annihilation meaningless. The final months of the war are no longer about victory. They are about delay, about holding on, about surviving the unstoppable advance of a force that does not tire, does not slow, does not run out. German command is no longer counting enemy losses. It is counting days. And every day, the factories keep working. Every day, the columns keep moving. Every day, the realization grows heavier. They are not losing because they failed. They are losing because the war they trained for no longer exists. And when the end finally comes, it will not feel like defeat in battle. It will feel like being buried by something too large to stop. February 1945, somewhere east of the Rhine. A German infantry captain watches American armor roll past through a break in the trees. The tanks are spaced perfectly. Trucks follow in disciplined intervals. Engineers clear obstacles almost before they are fully understood. There is no hesitation, no urgency, just motion. Relentless practiced motion. He has fought since Poland. He has seen panic, collapse, desperation. He knows what a stretched army looks like. This is not that. This is something else. By now, German command no longer talks about defeating the Americans. They talk about slowing them down. The language has changed. Orders no longer say, "Hold at all costs," because everyone understands what that really means now. There are no costs left to spend. German officers have finally identified the true enemy, but it is untouchable. You cannot ambush it. You cannot encircle it. You cannot bleed it. It has no front line. Because the real American strength does not advance in columns or dig into foxholes. It hums. It shifts gears. It runs 3 shifts a day. German soldiers notice it in small, demoralizing ways. An American unit withdraws after heavy losses and reappears days later, stronger than before. A destroyed bridge is replaced overnight by engineers, with prefabricated sections already waiting. A captured American truck breaks down and is simply abandoned, its crew unconcerned, confident another will appear. German soldiers fight as if every bullet matters. The Americans fight as if bullets are renewable. This is psychologically devastating. German doctrine taught that pressure creates collapse, that sustained losses break morale, that exhaustion leads to surrender. But the Americans do not behave like a force under pressure. They behave like a process. Losses do not cause hesitation. They cause resupply. Inside German headquarters, the maps are still updated. But the ritual has lost meaning. Enemy arrows move forward regardless of casualties. Defensive lines hold briefly, then dissolve. The question is no longer where the Americans will break through. It is how fast. German commanders attempt everything they know. Local counterattacks, elastic defense, strongpoints, ambushes. They perform brilliantly at the tactical level. But each success only buys hours, sometimes minutes. The Americans do not need perfect execution. They need sufficiency. And they have it in excess. What German command failed to understand, until it was far too late, is that American power does not peak. It ramps. Every month brings more men trained, more equipment standardized, more logistics refined. American efficiency improves under pressure. German efficiency degrades. This is the opposite of how wars are supposed to work. The final illusion collapses when German officers begin comparing notes across fronts. The same story everywhere. Italy, France, the Low Countries. Different terrain, different units. Same outcome. American operations do not slow after setbacks. They accelerate. The machine learns. Some German officers finally articulate the truth in private. The Americans are not trying to win battles. They are trying to finish the process. Once enough material is applied, resistance becomes irrelevant. It is not elegant. It is not glorious. It is unstoppable. By March 1945, German command understands that nothing on the battlefield can change the outcome. The war has been lost for months, perhaps years. Not because of a single decision. Not because of a single defeat. But because of a fundamental misunderstanding. They believed war was about destroying forces. America turned war into replacement speed. When the Rhine is crossed, it is not a dramatic moment for German command. It is confirmation. The last natural barrier means nothing to an enemy that treats rivers as logistical problems, not strategic ones. Bridges will be built. Supplies will cross. The advance will continue. The German infantry captain watches the last American vehicle disappear down the road. He does not feel anger. He feels something worse. Irrelevance. He realizes, in that moment, that no amount of bravery, skill, or sacrifice can alter what is coming. Because he is not standing in the path of an army. He is standing in the path of capacity. And capacity does not feel fear. It does not feel pain. It does not bleed. The war's final truth has revealed itself. German command trained to defeat men. They learned too late that men were never the problem. Factories were. Schedules were. Replacement rates were. And once those are set in motion, there is no decisive battle left to fight. Only the slow, grinding realization that the enemy was never in front of them at all. It was behind the horizon. Waiting, April 1945, Central Germany. The roads are crowded with refugees, shattered units, and vehicles that have run out of fuel for the last time. White flags hang from windows. Radios crackle with fragments of orders that no longer matter. American columns advance with methodical calm. There is no triumph in their movement. Only completion. German command has stopped pretending. In bunkers and ruined headquarters, officers speak openly now, not of victory, not even of holding. They speak of how it happened, of where the logic broke. They realize, finally and completely, that they were never meant to win this war the way they understood war. They prepared for decisive moments. America prepared for decisive processes. The German way of war was brilliant. But it was brittle. It assumed the enemy would collapse once enough pressure was applied. It assumed loss would produce weakness. It assumed destruction was final. America broke every one of those assumptions. From the very beginning, German command counted the wrong things. They counted tanks destroyed, not tanks produced. They counted soldiers killed, not soldiers trained. They counted victories, not sustainability. The Americans never needed to win faster. They only needed to keep going. And they always could. This is why the end feels strange to German officers. There is no single moment of failure. No single battle where everything was lost. Just the quiet understanding that resistance stopped mattering months ago. The outcome was already baked into the system. When German commanders surrender, they do not feel like they are laying down arms to an army. They feel like they are stepping aside for something too large to resist. something that was built years earlier and could not be turned off. The final lesson of the war is not about tactics. It is not about generals. It is not even about courage. It is about scale, about what happens when industrial capacity becomes the primary weapon. German command never truly realized they were fighting America's factories. By the time they did, those factories had already won. The battlefield simply hadn't caught up yet. And